All right. The time is now 6:31. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We have two council members that wrote in saying that they weren't able to attend, Councilwoman Schultz and Councilman Bone.
I'm making a motion to excuse both Councilman Bone and Councilwoman Schultz.
Second.
Motion's been made. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next, we have the invocation by Councilman Allen. Please rise.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing all of us to join here today to make sound decisions with patience and also fiscal responsibility as we look over the taxpayers' money for the budget. And please, Lord, also help heal all the Cibolo citizens that are afflicted with COVID-19. And also please watch over our first responders as they keep our city safe. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have the citizens to be heard. We have one citizen here in the audience to be heard. We have Mr. Colonel Dick Hetzel.
As you probably know, I have been watching the council meetings online and attended a couple of the council meetings and also attended an EDC meeting last night, which was interesting, along with the mayor. And a couple of the things, in addition to that, I also picked up this. Has anybody had a chance to see this one? Yeah, I thought it would be appropriate for you to take a look at the thing. Reason why I thought that it would be is that there's some things that I agree with and some things that I disagree with. One, EDC's had 12 years to get up and running. They should be able to run their operations. Point, very strong point. I agree with it. They should be able to run their operations. By the same token, in Texas Municipal League and some other areas that I've gone through also, not only they can pretty much run their own operations without anything other than an up or down veto. And that includes working with the city staff. And that's something that I realize there's a little bit of a hang up in there right now. Now, I also noted down here that Mr. Gibbs disagreed and says, I don't think we're close at all. And after visiting or watching last night the EDC meeting, I don't think we're close at all at this point. The reason I'm pointing this out is that one of the stories I've told over the years, 30 years ago when I was on, was it planning and zoning, 9 out of 10 suggestions we sent in to the council were turned down. Now, what does this tell me? Maybe they didn't think they really needed a committee. Oh, well, what about streets and drainage? Well, we've certainly got that one hashed out, haven't we? I also noticed that a couple months ago, discussion came up on the highways. In other words, what projects do we want to know next? And I know that they came up on the Cibolo Valley Drive. But Mr. Wolver over here, he had some streets over there that he needed to get lined up too. Somewhere back in there, should have been some kind of a committee that could provide suggestions to everybody into the whole thing. And I would suggest that you lean more heavily on the existing committees than one particular direction off and another thing, because it can tend to cause problems, I guess you could say. The reason why I mentioned the problems is I happen to look here in the back. And I know these folks I haven't spoken with them, but I got a sneaking suspicion they're pretty much upset. Now, by the same token, I know that it was mentioned that EDC should be able to balance their own budgets and whatnot. Well, at the same time, or roughly at the same time, I heard online is that, well, maybe they don't need to be involved in some of the meetings and whatnot that they get involved in. Well, that's part of the development process, some of that thing. And if they shouldn't be involved in that, one of the other things for that minute and 20 or over $100,000 that they're currently managing right now, is that's going for the Field of Dreams back here. Is that a city project or is that an EDC project? And they're the ones paying for it at this point. So these are all considerations, I think, in looking at these things. And I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, I've been going through some notes and other such things. And the only last thing is today's journal, U.S. debt hits post-war record. I don't want us to get into it by reducing the tax rate. About the only time I've seen that postulated, and I know this is not quite what you had in mind, is usually just before an election. And it's used as a political aim. So on that note, I will get out of everybody's way with 18 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Hetzel. Next, we have citizens that we heard the email Ms. Peggy's going to read.
This email is from Cindy Spencer. Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. I'm sending this email to address both items on tonight's agenda. First, I want to address the item of considering restructuring of the EDC and proposed budget for the EDC. I watched a special meeting held last night and heard members of the EDC talk about how the proposed changes would impact the corporation. The EDC has continued to do a phenomenal job for the city of Cibolo. Our city is growing rapidly, and we have been able to get many high-end businesses attracted to our areas. In addition, during the pandemic, which we are still in, the EDC was very proactive in helping businesses in the Cibolo and put out a lot of helpful information via their webpage. The members of the EDC stated they wanted a joint meeting with City Council so a frank and open discussion could occur before any changes. There have been concerns that the EDC was not operating correctly, yet it has been substantiated that they have been in compliance with all legal requirements under state of Texas legislation for any EDC, both now and well as in the past. There does not seem to be any sound reasoning to restructure the EDC or massively cut their budget, so I hope Council will agree to have joint meeting with EDC before making any changes. In the past, all parties have worked together for the good of all citizens of Cibolo. So I question why, after the election last November, that there is so much contention between a few council members toward the EDC. Next, I'd like to address the item on the proposed operation budget. I cringe when I heard a councilman say staff needs to do more with less. I know from attending council meetings in person until the pandemic that many other departments have been working with many vacant job openings, which means staff has already been doing more with less. Then a comment was made that staff should want to give up any pay raises since citizens were being greatly impacted by the pandemic. Truth is, everyone has been impacted by the pandemic. But how does that correlate with staff not getting a pay raise? The city staff has had to be there through this pandemic, so they have been impacted in many ways. So I was not able to follow the logic made by the mayor. Another area of concern to me was, why does Cibolo want to give $10,000 to Church Senior Center when the facility has been closed since March? So Cibolo citizens cannot utilize the center at this time. Last but not least is issue of monies tied to the EDC. Why would you want to leave the director's position vacant when growth is still happening during this pandemic, as it could put our city behind the 8 ball, so to speak? One council member suggested cutting all city funding to the EDC that appeared to be discussed in a meeting where not all council was present, so that clearly needs to be further addressed by all council. Thank you for your time and being able to speak these items. Respectfully, Cindy Spencer.
Thank you, Peggy. Moving on to item 6A, discussion consideration of the proposed economic development budget and the structure of the fiscal year 2020-2021. So I appreciate the staff sending over the outline for us to review on the structure. It looked pretty good after a lot of work and back and forth. I think the only real issue that I had with any of it was the secretary of the EDC posting the agendas, and that should fall in Peggy's lap, I believe, with the guidance of the EDC, of course. And were there any other issues with the outline? That was Councilman Gibbs.
So we've had 2 very successful years with the EDC. And it looks like we're on the threshold of having another successful year. And as I've said many times before, we are at the time to strike. And changing the structure, reducing the head count of EDC, nobody's proven to me that is necessary at this time. And we need to move forward with the current structure until after we meet with EDC. We need to replace in the budget the monies that we pulled out, because we need to put a strong foot forward to continue our growth.
Councilman Ward?
Mr. Mayor, so I watched the EDC meeting from last night, and I heard of a couple of meetings small group meetings that happened. I heard the 19th of August, I heard the 25th of August. Some members on council and staff, EDC board members. And while it's perfectly fine, folks don't need to, ask my permission or Councilman Allen's permission, for example, to have a small group meeting. It'd be helpful for us to get info out after the fact of this is what we discussed in general. Doesn't even mean everybody has to agree with everything that's in there, but just the key highlights, and can send it out to Ms. Peggy so we avoid Open Meetings Act violation. But I think the outline you referenced was addressed last night in the EDC meeting. But I can only speak for myself. I don't know what outline you're talking about, and not everybody here has had a chance to see this. And if it's seeing it ahead of the meeting, we're still looking for Monday, Ms. Peggy, is that right? Yes. Tentatively? Okay, so we're at a disadvantage to have a discussion when not everybody's playing with the same info.
Yeah, no, point taken. We did discuss at a city council meeting, I forget which one, that we were going to appoint or have certain council members sit in front of their EDC and hash out the differences. And so that happened, and we also had staff members present. So I apologize for not sharing my notes, but given the fact that I think all the council members should have at least known that the meeting was occurring, I put that right back on their, if they didn't inquiry about it, then, it goes 2 ways, so.
And Mr. Herrera sent out that sheet.
Yeah, and, it wasn't a secret. I mean, we held it right here.
He sent it out to all council members, so. Or Leanne did, as a matter of fact, I think it was, yeah. So,
Yeah, well, I mean, in all fairness, I mean, it's not like we had a meeting out in the parking lot or something, but the information was there to be received, so if anybody was interested.
And the direction from council, a few council meetings back, was that I would sit with EDC subcommittee and members of staff in order to hash out some things so that we can try to figure stuff out.
Right.
So let me say this, because that actually never happened. The CEDC never reached out to myself in order to sit down and hash out how the structure should look, nor did they ever reach out to Mr. Herrera and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Herrera. So Mr. Herrera did this particular diagram and document himself based off of the information that was put out on that 19th, the 19th meeting before we had with the budget. And so we had sat down with the members, the 3 subcommittee members on that 19th, you, myself, and Mr. Hicks. And we sat down with those individuals and we kind of hashed out a few things and stuff like that. And so then Mr. Herrera then took the ball and ran with it and developed that document. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that and how things transpired. So again, there was no like a surprise. Here it is. I mean, this was stuff that was supposed to have been going on for some time. And not to mention, I mean, at the end of the day, we've been kicking this can since December, and now we're in September, right before the budget, and we've been given the CEDC an opportunity to kind of help figure things out. And so, and I know there's some things that were said at the council meeting or at their meeting yesterday, but I just want to point out a few things, and then I've got something to say, and then you can have the floor, Mr. Gibbs. But at the end of the day, I want to talk about statute, and then I'll address some of those things last night. The statute is very clear, right? The statute is very clear in who has authority to develop the structure, the organization, and everything along that line. So in section 501.054 of the Economic Development Act and the Texas Government Local Code, it states that the powers of the corporation shall be subject at all times to the control of the city governing body. That's us, right? And it
That means
also
all of
states,
council.
hold on one second.
all
Don't
of
interrupt me
council.
while I'm talking, okay?
It's all of council.
Don't interrupt me while I'm
all
talking.
of
Please, hey, Councilman Quinn has the floor.
Also, section 501.401 of the act gives the city the authority to alter the structure, the organization, programs or activities of the development corporation at any time. Nowhere in the statute does it say that the CEDC has the authority to develop their own structure. Everywhere that you look, it says that is up to the council on how that structure should look. All right? Agreed that it is all of council, and not one person of council has made a decision. I mean, we're here tonight so that we can vote on it, hopefully, and we'll go from there. Additionally, I just got to address the concerns of the CEDC because I understand the concerns. And so first and foremost, I want the CEDC to know that in no way, shape, or form are we trying to take power away from the CEDC. What we're trying to do is we're trying to embolden and trying to give them the keys of the palace, sort of say, right? I mean, we want to give them more power at the end of the day. So it's important that I stress this. It's important that everybody knows that I understand that change is difficult and that it is a one constant that we as a city must manage together, all right? The process of change starts at the grassroots level through the people's representatives, which are us, the elected council, and the city management. Orderly change occurs by outlining the processes, and that has been accomplished in the document provided to the CEDC and worked on by the city manager. And it's been looked at by council, or it should have been looked at by council. While I understand that some may feel uncomfortable during a time of change, it is important to focus on how important moving our city forward is to all of us. We have the same goal, the desire to make our city a wonderful community in which to work and live. The dialogue about important budget considerations and providing some improved structural tweaks has been in order to help get us a clear metric for the greater level of success. From a council perspective, there is a fiduciary responsibility of all tax dollars, including the 4B tax dollars that are generated by the CEDC. The council is here to ensure that those 4B tax dollars are allocated in the most efficient use and in line with the statute for benefits of all of the citizens of Cibolo. The 4B tax dollars are in fact another revenue source that has been utilized to make improvements throughout the city. We have spent the 4B tax dollars on many different things. The soccer field, signs for the newly named or renamed Cibolo Valley Drive off of IH-35, the Old Town parking lot improvement, business grants, and a lot more, all right? These examples that I just spoke about illustrate the vision that the 4B tax dollars could be used to work on bigger and better projects for the businesses and citizens through the efforts of the CEDC. These process improvements within the structure of the CEDC have been to better facilitate the identification of these projects and that benefit the city. The CEDC is paying almost $300,000 in salaries to city employees. The city staff paid with the CEDC tax dollars are working less than 10% of their time on CEDC project identified and project management. The staff objective is marketing and advertising that is in line. However, the CEDC can only spend 10% of their budget for that purpose, which would roughly be $6,500 or $65,000. That is much less than the $300,000 that they're currently spending. The city is currently placing a burden of $300,000 on the CEDC. This is what needs to change. The CEDC should be taken out from under the burden of these expenses so that those dollars can be spent on projects similar to the ones that we have successfully completed. Imagine the power of improvement that the CEDC would have if focus was placed on providing a way that we could achieve the goals outlined in our master plan. The CEDC could identify which projects to invest our 4B tax dollars, and that would best address the issues that prevent or limit businesses from coming to Cibolo. We have a financial process management issue, and it comes down to being able to be accountable to the 4B tax dollars being spent. The CEDC has been provided written communication about these changes and clear direction. By unburdening the CEDC from this expense, we have freed them. Hands are not tied, and the CEDC would have to enter a contract with any entity for any work that would be done regardless of what it's for. As that was one of the first changes. Now that we have accomplished getting the required contracts in place and we understand how to do the contracts, it's time to focus on the CEDC on projects and not paying staff salaries. To address some of the issues of concern that were brought up at the CEDC meeting last night, let me close by saying, we are not Buddha, we are not Bastrop. They're bringing in millions of dollars of 4B tax money. They have the luxury to spend 6 figures on promoting their cities. And I believe that we will eventually get there. But right now, today, we are limited by our dollar amount. It is important to note that we also receive over $1 million in sales tax dollars that are allocated to streets and maintenance in our roads. We do not use this money to pay the salaries of our public works departments. It is important that our 4B tax dollars are more effectively and efficiently used. And these process changes will allow for that. It will give the CEDC the latitude and flexibility to do what they need to do with those 4B tax dollars.
Thank you, Councilman Quinn. Councilman Allen, Councilman Hicks, before I turn it back over to Councilman Gibbs, do you guys have any input on this?
No, I'm still soaking it in and, getting up to speed on what we're looking at as far as the changes, but at this point, I don't have any comments. Thank you.
I agree with the mayor on the proposed structure of leaving our city secretary to be able to post those, because the board isn't going to have that ability to get on our website to post that. So I think we need to leave that. If they want to take their notes, I have no problem with them taking their notes. But I do believe that we need to leave our city secretary or the assistant city secretary to be in here to be there for any anything that comes up during the meeting. Piggyback off Mr. Quinn. In that meeting, it was an eye opener for a couple of their members. They didn't realize that 4B tax dollars is how it's supposed to be being spent and how it's supposed to be dealt with. They didn't realize that You know, they're paying city employees salaries. I mean, they knew that they were paying city employees salaries, but they didn't realize that, you know, they should be able to be using that money to take and doing infrastructure projects, doing different projects for the city to build the city up. The EDC should have full control over their 4B tax dollars. But if, you know, we're having them pay 300,000, I think is what Mr. Quinn said, to city employees' salaries, that only leaves them a couple $100,000 to put towards projects where they could go out and buy the property down on Bolton Road for a fire station, saying, hey, we got this property, we help. You know, there's different things that the EDC is supposed to be doing. I've been going to a lot of these conferences, and I know a lot of y'all have work and y'all work, but I go to these conferences, I learn a whole lot of stuff. I mean, I learned a lot of stuff on the EDC conference or workshop today. I understand that y'all have work, and I'm retired and I'm able to go to these, but whenever I'm finding out and I'm asking the people at TML different questions, they're like, yeah, that's kind of a way to get by it, but yeah, that's not really how it should be done, then, you know, it raises questions. I mean, that's why I raised the question last year's budget. I mean, he says it's been going on for a year. I'll say it's been going on or just under a year. I'll say it's been going on for a year. For us to be giving $120,000, we can't do that, Mr. Gibbs. It states we cannot just give them $120,000. If you can find it somewhere that says that we can, please pull it up and let me see. But I've talked to lawyers. We cannot just give them $120,000. The multi-event center that Mr. Hetzel brought up, that was an EDC project. That wasn't a city project. The EDC said, hey, let's do something. We got 4B tax dollars. That's on the EDC's back. They need to be making that payment every year. If the $120,000 is for that project, then that's all wrong. That is the EDC's. That's theirs, not the city's. I've made it pretty clear. There needs to be the EDC, the Cibolo Economic Development Corporation, that's their own entity, separate from the city, which is how it is in most places. Then you've got the Cibolo Economic Development Department, which Kelsey and Justin are in, or Dustin are in. Two separate entities, and they work with the CEDC, work together to promote it. But that's my 2 cents for right now. I mean, I've got a lot of stuff, you know, I've been biting my tongue and everybody wants to see this one way, but you know, if we're given $120,000 that could go into the budget of our budget, and CEDC can manage their own budget, I mean, that's more money going back to us because they can do projects and help us do projects to where we're not taking and having to fork out money for those projects.
Councilman Gibbs?
So I want to make a clarification on Mr. Quinn's clarification a while ago. Council did not ask him to go through and direct EDC on structure. Council challenged EDC to go and review their structure and to determine if any changes needed to be made. Councilman Quinn had some concerns about that, and so council said, run those by Councilman Quinn and get his feedback. Not direction, get his feedback. That hasn't happened. It's been more directive. You talk about life changing, how tough it is. My whole life has been about change. I was a project manager for more years than you've been employed. And so I know about change. But one thing I know about change is you don't change for change's sake. You don't change without a goal or without a reason to fix something. And we don't have any of those right now. And as far as the structure not being right or the $120,000 not being right, Carlton Schwab has a disagreement with that. He's the president of the Texas Economic Development Council. And I think he probably knows what he's talking about. And he says that the way we're running, the way we're spending our money, And the way we're funded is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. We don't need to make a change.
So, yeah, so at the end of the day, nobody's come back to me for feedback. And there's been no directive. I mean, nobody's been directing them to do anything, right? So I don't think I've ever gone to Kelsey and said, hey, y'all need to do this, this, and this. And I haven't gone to the CEDC and said, y'all need to do this, this, and this. And you can sit and laugh all you want, Mr. Gibbs, but at the end of the day, I was elected to come in here and to provide oversight, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Okay. And and Charles Schwab, he works for a nonprofit organization for the state of Texas. Okay. It's a nonprofit organization that helps with the establishment. It helps with some other things. They do some training and things of that nature. But they're not the experts for the state of Texas on the CEDC. And as a matter of fact, there's no oversight on EDCs within the state of Texas, as that was taken away a few years ago and given down to the municipalities that provide oversight and put into regulation for the municipalities to regulate. Okay, so I'm going to take my advice from lawyers at TML who I've been getting advice from, because I believe that they're a little bit more robust on the law as compared to Mr. Schwab, who works for a nonprofit organization that tries to help get businesses into the state of Texas. And so, on top of that, I just want to piggyback on some things that Mr. Hicks stated. And so I just want to be clear because the regulation is pretty clear as well, that we can spend no more than 10% of our dollars, our 4B tax dollars for what we consider promotional purposes, right? And so the Texas Attorney General has opined on it. And they have basically said that promotional expenditure is considered either advertisement or publicizing. So when we have individuals that are going out and publicizing the city of Cibolo and saying, hey, we want you to come to the city of Cibolo to do business, bring your business here, it's a walking billboard. I mean, they're publicizing and they're making phone calls and they're advertising the city of Cibolo, and it may not go into a booklet or anything along that lines, but at the end of the day, that's exactly what they're doing. So the CEDC has an opportunity to spend $65,000 on that to help continue to promote the city of Cibolo. But at the end of the day, it is the city of Cibolo's responsibility to promote the city of Cibolo and not the CEDC's responsibility. It is our responsibility. It is our responsibility to have these individuals, which we have two of them, that are city employees. It is their responsibility to promote the city of Cibolo and go out and find businesses for the city of Cibolo and work with the CEDC in order to figure out ways to encourage and entice these businesses to come to the city of Cibolo. Additionally, it is the city of Cibolo's responsibility to do corridor studies, to do strategic plans, and to do all this stuff. That is not the burden of, or should not be put on the shoulders of the CEDC. That is not their responsibility. Their responsibility as a 7-member board, because that's who the CEDC is. It's a 7-member board. It's not the employees of the CEDC. It's not the employees of the city of Cibolo. It is a 7-member board that is the CEDC. And guess what? They're appointed by us as council, right? We appoint them. Those individuals answer to us. They get their direction from us and everything along that lines. So at the end of the day, we're trying to give the CEDC for the 2021 budget $700,000 that they're able to utilize to entice businesses to come to the city of Cibolo. I mean, their hands are not going to be tied. Do they have to get approval from council? Yes, but they've got to get approval from council now to spend money, right? I mean, at the end of the day, because they answer to us and we are the fiduciary oversight of those dollars, it comes to us for approval. And what I'd like to see them do is use more of that money in order to entice businesses to come here. So no way, shape, or form are we like doing a drastic change on the CEDC. The only thing that we're doing is saying, listen, city staff will be city staff. They will answer to Mr. Herrera. And at the end of the day, we now have a funnel in order to say, Mr. Herrera, this is what we'd like your city staff to focus on. This is how we'd like to see things for business development in the city of Cibolo. We now have a focal point to go to and say, can you do this for us, X, Y, and Z, as compared to how it was in the past, to where the lines were blurred and there was no clarity on direction, and to where you had members of the EDC hiding behind certain facades. I mean, at the end of the day, oh, I work for Mr. Herrera. No, I work for the CEDC. And so the lines are now clear. We know who does what. The CEDC does their thing. The city manager now has full control to be able to do what he needs to do in order to help push and drive the city of Cibolo forward as we should be driven forward. So when we talk about change, this is good change. I don't know what type of change you've had in the past, but this is good change.
Mr. Garza, is there anything wrong? I mean, if we're talking, we need legal opinion, and we don't want to rely on somebody that is, I don't personally know how many years Mr. Schwab has in the business, and I don't know that he necessarily needs to be a lawyer. I would imagine he's dealt with this enough to at least speak off the cuff, but I don't know what the gentleman, I don't know what his background is. So this $120,000, we've heard that it can't be put in the budget. Is that illegal? Is that wrong? Have we been doing, the comments made that we can't be doing that?
The city of Cibolo is authorized to give grants to the EDC for economic development purposes.
So it's been viewed, the money that has.
In the current agreement, it
as a grant.
specifically says grant.
Okay.
In the previous agreements that were in place, it said grant. If you recall, and some of you may, when we were asked this question back in the February, March time period, we concluded that there was nothing inappropriate or illegal of the way things are being done. The major concern was that there was no current interlocal in place, that it had expired for a few years. And that is why we resolved it by adopting something in March for the remainder of the fiscal year. We're up to close to the end of the fiscal year for that agreement to expire. So this is the perfect opportunity for the council to discuss how they want to move forward with that interlocal.
Okay.
Should I get some clarity real quick on the grant?
Sure.
Real quick, Mr. Williver. So the grant though, it's a grant, but it's got to be geared towards economic development. Am I correct?
It's to assist the EDC in doing economic development purposes. Correct.
And that's got to be how when they get that money, they've got to be able to say, okay, this is how we spent this $120,000. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so that's where some of the confusion is with that $120,000 is that there's no clarity on where that's being spent.
And that's fair, but the reason I come to the lawyer is because the way his statement's made, Councilman Hicks, it comes across. I heard it that way. And I'm not on the EDC, but I know, over the course of the last few months, things that they have heard have been internalized as y'all are jacked up and you're doing things, whether you know it or not, you're doing things illegal. That's a summary statement. Folks may not mean things that way, but that's how it's coming, because I talk to my EDC guy as well, just like everybody else talks. I hopefully talk to yours. So that is how some folks are perceiving those comments. So if it's a matter of being more specific in a line item budget about this will be used for these things, that can be, you can actually go back if you get audited and say this 120 or whatever the amount is was used for these development kinds of things and not for salary or unallowed things, then so be it. Because I'm sure you're tired of talking about this, want this put behind as well, because it all started out with this. And then what it came down to, to date, after about $5,000 later in legal fees, is we needed to update the contract a couple years ago out of everything else that was in here. And I think, yes, and I will, having talked to my individual and just my own feelings tossed in, is that the give a damn factor about this, it's the fund meter rather, it's pegged. And when I watched last night, it was almost virtually palpable that folks feel defeated on the CEDC. It's what I heard in voices. That's what has actually been mentioned to me. I can't speak for everybody on there. So a question I do have, back to this 120,000, because I know we want to talk about the structure. There's talk about having a meeting on Monday and all this coming together about the timing of a new contract. Are we allowed to go forward right now with the 120 the way it is, and then and I just sorted Ms. Miranda and sorted on the legal side, to do a budget amendment, if it's in October, in other words, to move the budget along, get things done, are we allowed to put the 120 where it is now? And then once we have our follow-on meeting, talk about structure, come to whatever the resolution is, then if it is smart or needed to move that 120 somewhere else, whatever that final dollar amount is, can that be done legally through a budget amendment? So we don't get stuck on the money part of it tonight.
Let me answer that question, and Anna can correct me if I'm wrong, but once you adopt the budget is a guide. It's put into motion. City council can come back and amend that upward or downward as majority of the council members see. The question about the 120, keep in mind that number got reduced at the request from EDC to go from 120 to 90,000. So what's in the proposed budget is 90,000, not the 120.
Oh, okay. And understand that, the budget is a guide, but I just want to make sure there wasn't something unique tied to law that said this kind of money, it has to be that way for the rest of the year. I just wanted to make sure we didn't make a suggestion and then we tie our hands and then find out after the fact that that's something we're legally not allowed to do.
And I just, with that 90,000, 120,000, whatever it is right now, I just want to say this, like, if we go with this structure to where these individuals are paid from the general fund, I mean, they're still going to be doing the same job, right? So they're going to be paid from the general fund. So taking away that $120,000 isn't going to hurt the CEDC, right? Because at the end of the day, they're going to have more revenue than what they had before because they were paying almost $300,000 in salaries. You know what I'm saying? So by taking away that 120 and putting it back into the general fund to fund the salaries of these two individuals that are working for the economic development department, I mean, the CEDC is going to have a lot more money. So, I mean, at the end of the day, they're losing that 120,000 is not going to be, should not be heartbreaking for them because at the end of the day, they're going to gain, $180,000 at the end of the day.
Isn't that going to be offset if they need to contract back with the city staff for those services?
But again, so when they, because they're in contracts right now. So I know they do a contract with Miss Peggy. I saw a thing on the line item that they should still contract with finance because there's some nuances in there to where if they're not bonded, then they have to come out of pocket and pay for a bond and things of that nature. So to have Miss Miranda still keep the books for them would be a smart thing for them to do. But the thing is that, and we discussed this, I discussed this with Kelsey and Mr. Herrera at one time, they're spending about 15% of their time doing actual CEDC work as compared to doing like promotional advertising work and stuff like that. So 80 85% of that budget that they're spending is going to go away. So they're going to recoup a lot of that money because they're only going to have to pay about 15% of the salary or whatever they determine it is. And oh, by the way, they're not going to need to pay that until they actually need them. So all of a sudden a project comes up and they need to borrow somebody, manpower from the city. They say, okay, how much is it going to cost us to borrow this manpower from the city? And they do a contract. Or, hey, we want to go ahead and use the $65,000 that we have 10% for promotional purposes. Can we go ahead and pay that to the city so that y'all can go ahead and promote in the name of the CEDC and things of that nature, right? So, I mean, yes, there's still going to be money, but it's not going to be nowhere near the 300,000 that they're currently paying. And that's a rough estimate. And that's including the benefits and everything along that lines. And I don't think I'm very far off on that number. I think I'm pretty close, but I mean, it could be a little bit less and it may be a little bit more, but I'm not 100% sure. But at the end of the day, I believe that they're going to gain some revenue back to where they can do bigger projects than they're already doing. Maybe even up the ante on grants or whatever the case might be. I don't know. That would be something for the CEDC to decide at that point.
Councilman Hicks?
Our city staff, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been under the impression that the city staff, being back when Mr. Luft was here, Kelsey, Dustin, they don't want to work under the CEDC. That's my impression. So if they don't want to work under the CEDC, they want to work for the city, then yeah, the city should be paying their salaries, not the CEDC. I mean, if you look at it, they're paying the city's salaries, but yet they're not working for them. He said 15%. I don't know if that's correct or not, Kelsey, but if it's 15% of the time, she's paying, the CEDC's getting ripped off, if you ask me. I mean, they're paying her full salary, they're paying Dustin's full salary, but yet they're only getting 15% of their time. I mean, I was very much under the impression that the city staff, that is currently our city staff, wanted to stay under the city staff and under the city working for Mr. Herrera. And if that's the case, then we need to recoup our 120,000 to help pay for their salaries. Let the CEDC hire, whether it's the city secretary, whether it's Anna Miranda, whether it's Kelsey, whether it's Dustin, whether it's IT, then they do a contract and they pay them for that time. They've got $600,000 that they've got now full range. And it'll grow. And that's my thought on it is, there needs to be this distinction. I mean, right now, the CEDC looks like it's just intertwined with the city of Cibolo. They're their own entity. I don't know why people don't seem to understand that. They're their own entity. They should be having full control over that 4B tax dollars. That's theirs at our discretion, but that's what they're there for, is to where we get those 4B tax dollars to help us pay for projects, to help a little bit for promotion, but that's what it's there for.
So we've went around the table here and spoke about this, and let me remind everybody, we have a 2-hour meeting, and this is item 1 of 2 on the agenda. We're coming up to an hour on discussion on this item, but I'd like to say, as far as the EDC goes, I mean, we can either make a decision tonight or we could wait to the special meeting, but I think that, absorbing all of this for the last 9 months now, let me remind everyone that the only other person other than Mr. Hetzel that was on the Economic Development Corporation in this room is myself. And for 5 years I spent on the board, and Colonel Hetzel remembers, first, we talk about communication. So the first strike was we used to have liaisons for the different committees. And one day city council came to us and said, we're no longer requiring liaisons. So, and that was that was pretty much a blow. And then in about 2016, we were approached by the mayor and told, I can't even paraphrase what he was asking us, but ride hard and fast and let's, tasked us with a bunch of items to do. And we were kind of questioned on what he was asking us. I remember speaking to the fellow board members, scratching our head. So we come up with a metrics program, which we spent almost a year on. And today, from what I understand and what I've seen, they've skinned that down to almost bare bones, nothing. So all that work that the CEDC put into this is disappeared. I think my opinion on this, for whatever it's worth, is that we need to get on with this, whatever we're going to get on with. So we want the 4B tax dollars. We want to do it the right way. We want to spend it right. I'm excited about the opportunity to have projects that are generated out of this, because before it wasn't the focus. I know that there's some heartache. I want to reassure, I think the communication is what I was hearing. The communication was definitely off. That needs to improve, but, we're not going to get there to communicate with this by keep hassling on different language and who did what and whatnot. We were tasked to sit down and listen to the EDC members, and I've listened to several of the EDC members, and, there was some confusion in this. I think, a clear outline and definition of where to go from here. And at the end of the day, working together is a primary focus. It doesn't matter how we get an AW Texas plan or a Santikos. At the end of the day, it's the journey doesn't matter. It's the result. So, I'd like to put that together and close the loop on this quickly. And if I'm not mistaken, Frank, so we talk about the budget being a living document, so to speak. So would the directive on this EDC. Am I correct?
You're correct. The one thing that you need to recall is that there are bylaws, so that if we amend the organization, there's that bylaw procedure we'll have to go through of having the EDC approve the bylaws and the council approving those bylaws
Correct.
As well.
And so I think that, providing a skeleton with what Mr. Herrera circulated to council here, providing a skeleton and then getting the feedback from the EDC members to tweak it. But I think the direction that we're going is clear. And I want to make put on record that I am 100% against hiring a third economic development director at this time and place with everything that's gone on in this country. A salary of that magnitude at the upper staff level, I think is unacceptable. And we can always add it later. As the city flourishes and grows and those dollars become available, we can always add a third or a fourth or whatever number you want to put on it. But I think it's irresponsible on our behalf at this juncture. So we got 5 minutes left. Councilman Gibbs, you got 2 minutes of that. Councilman Hicks, you got 2 minutes of that. And Councilman Wolver, you got 2 minutes of it.
I'll be real brief. My recommendation at this point is we've got a lot of opinions. And I'll say we've got a lot of layman's opinions. And I think no matter what we decide, we're going to have a lot of people that are not happy.
Sure.
My recommendation is that we get a workshop together with the professional, our consultant, a professional to help us redesign this and put it together correctly so that we can all move forward together in a proper way, put this to bed, stop having the discussion.
Councilman Hicks.
Mr. Herrera, at that meeting that we had, you'd said that you had appeared before the EDC and told them that you were not for adding another person. Were you not? I mean, you said that, correct? Or was I just mishearing that?
Let him answer.
So this year, during the budget process, I did appear in front of the Economic Development Corporation, and they were discussing their budget, and I indicated to them that this was going to be a very tough year for the city of Cibolo, and that I had asked each of the departments not to add any new additional personnel with the exception of the fire department, and that they were asking for a fourth position in the budget, and that I was prepared to recommend to the city council that that fourth position not be budgeted. It was removed by the EDC board at that moment, or shortly thereafter.
Okay. I wasn't thinking of a workshop like Councilman Gibbs. I was thinking more to this proposed meeting for Monday, which would give time for those that haven't seen this to digest it, ask any questions, and then make our agreed upon whatever structure changes there should be, and then talk, then Tuesday, we're going to talk at the council meeting, talk about the budget as a way to wrap things up tonight. But if a workshop and a pro who would be a disinterested third party to look at it, that's fine, especially if it is not going to negatively impact. We've got a way to amend the budget based on whatever future decisions there are. And I would also ask Mr. Garza if that's not going to negatively impact any of the rewriting of the contract or bylaws, if moving it to the right a little bit doesn't impact that, then I would be in favor of a workshop, or at least hiring somebody to look at this. I mean, we've already invested $5,000 in this. We've invested money in other things, and if it's truly it would really be an investment in making sure that EDC is structured the right way, spending money the right way, and the right recommendations, and then they go forth and prosper. And if you're truly talking change management, because I've had to do that for a living as well, part of that is getting buy-in from everybody and not just ramrodding it through. And then if we all have something that we can live with, and it may not be 100% victory for everybody, but it's something we can all say, sure, we got consensus, then that's a victory for all of us and for Cibolo.
So we've been kicking this can for 10 months. And I'm done kicking the can down the road, and I want to make a motion. I want to make a motion that we restructure the CEDC to where the two staff members fall up underneath Mr. Herrera, and the CEDC's primary focus will be projects, and they will have full control of their budget for 2021, which is going to be roughly $700,000, based on Mr. Herrera's little memo that he brought out. Obviously, there's going to be a couple of nuances in there that we got to change as far as, contracting to individuals and everything along that lines. But I think we need to go ahead and cut sling load. We need to go ahead and align the staff up underneath Mr. Herrera, and we need to allow the CEDC to be separate.
For clarification, 2 members, correct?
2 members.
Motion's been made. Do I have a second?
And I'll second that with the city secretary is to continue to do the drafts, or to do the agendas.
I'd also like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we put together a workshop with a professional consultant steeped in the EDC logic and laws to help the city council, and EDC come up with an appropriate structure and organization to move forward.
Motion's been made and second, so we're going to vote on the first one. Councilman Quinn, start with you.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Only because I don't feel that I've got all of the right info to support it yet. I'm voting nay.
Thank you, sir. Motion carries. So back with, we can't vote on the second one, can we?
Well,
It's going to contradict exactly what we just.
I was
voted
going
on.
to state that we can't take that second motion until we have the first vote, because you can't have 2 motions pending that are in conflict with each other. So with the vote, that second motion does not go before the board, the council.
Thank you. Item 6B, discussion, consideration of the proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2020, 2021, and its proposed tax rate. This item, I know we have a lot of interested folks here. I want to go right to, the discussion was, the whole purpose of having this meeting is there was some council members that had some items they wanted to discuss specifically. I'm going to start the conversation out as after the first night of the budget meetings, and I believe Mr. Hetzel had a quote in there of the newspaper, which I guess I overlooked. But I was upset with some of the cuts that we were proposed because I didn't see the economic development position not being on there. And I would suggest that we do not look at any COLA, cost of living, what's the last, doesn't get allowance. I'm sorry. Thank you, Councilman Hicks. Be cut except for at the senior level, salaried senior staff members are not cut, but frozen. And the other folks that are working under a department head, that they are protected from this, because the intent of the whole budget cut and looking at freezing this is for folks like myself that have to go to work every day and, could possibly have, hardship. And it don't matter if it's, in the construction business, in the retail business, or working for the municipality. And that goes all the way across the board to the police and fire, but not looking at doing a cost of living cut for those folks. So with that, I'm going to open it up to our city manager.
Can I clarify something, please?
Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead.
So you use terminology, cost of living increase. There has not been proposed a cost of living within this budget. What we have within the budget is our pay plan, which is a merit increase, which individuals are allowed to be reviewed on their anniversary, and they're eligible to receive up to 2.5. That is in this current budget, and there was, I think what's happening is we're confusing the two.
Yes.
And but from my office point of view, it's extremely important for us to continue to have a pay plan. The pay plan is what helps us keep our employees whole to some degree, not always. The pay plan helps keep the morale of our department because you have something to look forward to. And if we take that away, then sometimes you don't keep the good employees, you lose them.
Right.
It helps us hire people that have strong certifications and other record-keeping things that we may need for the city. Great tool for advancing our organization to others and to the outside. And, I know we've talked about, maybe eliminating some other budget cuts and whatnot, and not knowing what's going to happen with the EDC on the 120. But Mary, it would seem to me that, if we have to look at budgetary cuts at the executive level, at the end, that's going to be a council decision. I will tell you that it's for staff morale, it would be important to have, but the staff has also indicated if that's what it takes in order to maintain our merit plan, then they're not happy, but they're willing to do it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to address all of you because I know there was concern, and I am obviously the one that brought up making some cuts when it comes to pay raises and everything like that, and I didn't clarify. The very next day, Mr. Herrera called me, and he said, "Hey, Councilman Quinn, were you weren't wanting to cut like hourly and the staff and all that?" And so our conversation was, no, absolutely not. My intent has always been at the executive level. It's always been for what the 8 people that sit up at the higher level, the hierarchy of the city, and looking at that as a possible cut. So I just want you guys to know that was never my intent. I would never do that to you guys. You are too important to the city, and to take money out of your pockets like that would be a slap in the face, and I understand that. You know, I used to work for a living as well. I mean, I was an enlisted soldier for the Army and then switched over to being an officer and everything like that. So trust me, I understand the hard work that each and every one of you come in and do every single day. And I appreciate everything that you do for the city of Cibolo. And from the bottom of my heart, I apologize if y'all construed it in that way. And I will fight tooth and nail for you guys to ensure that you guys are paid what you guys deserve. And I would never go to take money out of your pocketbooks like that. So again, thank you for everything that you do, and just rest assured that you guys are safe. And I believe the rest of the council would agree with me that you're in good hands, and we will make sure that your pocketbooks are not affected in any of this.
Councilman Hicks?
I agree, because I worked for a municipality at one time also, and when you start cutting hourly employees, that's when they start leaving, even for 5 cents more an hour, you know? But then they leave with their certificates that the city paid for. And then when you have them leave with that, we've got to go through the process of going out, putting out ads to hire somebody new. Then you've got to send them off to get their certificates. So it's costly whenever you do that. And I don't think that it came across correctly that we're not here to cut our hourly employees at all. That's not what we're looking at. Y'all are the backbone of this city. And as Mr. H had said, you know, looking at executives across the board, yeah, that's one thing, but we weren't here to cut y'all salaries. I mean, I wouldn't do that to y'all, you know, because that's when people start leaving, and it costs the city more money for y'all to leave and go somewhere else. It's going to cost us more money than to retain y'all and give y'all somewhat of a raise. So I hope y'all understand that, because I was in y'all's shoes at one time too. I know exactly where y'all are at.
I'm glad to hear that. Words matter, and it definitely was not taken the right way when we initially heard about merit pay raises. But I'll use some of your words against you about, you know, now you're separating hourly workers from the executives. They're all employees. It takes every one of them to make the machine run. And every one of them, we've heard, you know, more with less and all those good things for the last 6 months. Well, let me start over. So what we're talking about, I asked Mr. H, what is this merit pay raise? It's a wedge. It doesn't say everybody gets one, but it's saying we're putting a pot of money aside for folks that have earned it. Hence the word merit. Doesn't mean all 66 going to get, thousands going to get paid. I said about how much of that would be for the executive level, 11,000. And I go back through and I look at the budget, and even something that's near and dear to my heart that we've all asked the Parks and Recs Commission to go look at the senior program, and we earmarked 10 grand, not necessarily to go to the shirts program or here, but it was 10,000. And I go through and I look and I see the shirts library donation 40,000, and even things such as, these are all great programs, and the summer nights is about 13.5 for this next budget year, what's put in. But when I go look at what a city is supposed to do, the core functions, the roads, the toilets flush. Well, we've got GVEX, so we don't have to worry about the lights turn on. Somebody else is doing that for us. But all those things that people, when they pay their taxes, they expect things to happen. Those are the core functions. And everything else on that is gravy, whether it's a kids program, a senior program, contributing to a library. So if I need to make cuts to pay $66,000, I've got other ways to go do that, not have to cut the tax rate anymore. That's been done in the past. We're still paying that now for a period of 3 or 4 years in a row, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, where the city cut the tax rate. And while that sounds great and it helps you, helps me, at the same time, that's less revenue coming in to pay for things. So I think with the budget that's been proposed, it's already in there. And when you've got folks for the last 6 months or so, we had a hiring freeze, no new positions. except for, 4 or 5 new firefighters in the budget. The taxpayers have expected the exact same amount of service, if not more, with 40% less people out of the ones that we're already authorized to have. Those folks are getting burned out, whether the hourly workers or the executive level and everybody else in between. They have all busted their humps this last year to keep the same level of service, if not more. And it is a travesty if you, for the cost of $13,000, don't want to put that in for the merit pay raises for everybody to fund $66,000 total. So folks would leave. You already have folks prepared to leave because they feel like you're not thanking them. That taking that out of the budget is a big middle finger to them. So they take those certificates, and some folks might even be willing to go to a nearby municipality and actually take a demotion in terms of title for the same amount of money. Why would we do that? We talked about investment, economic investment. If you want the city to keep doing what it's doing, you invest in the people. That is the biggest investment we can make to make sure that, the mowers are working, that when somebody flushes their toilet, it doesn't pack up on it, it works. And what does it take? It takes the leadership to help make that happen. And that's not to say that leadership is any more important than the hourly workers. I go back to the same thing. It's one team to make it all happen. And to not put that in the budget it will send the wrong message. I see the mayor, we can't afford, we already said in the budget that we can afford with really effectively a tax decrease already. And we can't invest $66,000 in our own people. Wrong.
So I just,
Councilman Gibbs.
oh, go ahead.
So I totally agree with you. We should not be talking about not having merit pay for everybody. It doesn't make sense. We're not in dire straits. It's tough times. We're not in dire straits. But we're at the same time, we're talking about reducing the tax rate by a penny. And what does that mean? That's $25 per rooftop that we're trying to save. $25 a rooftop that they will not see, because what ends up happening is it gets reduced from the escrow, and then a year, 18 months from now, their escrow may be reduced by $25. That makes no sense. We've got the money. We need to spend the money to keep our good people. Using the merit pay increase process, we can reward the people that are doing a great job, and we can support all of our fellow workers that keep this city growing. So I do not support not paying a merit pay increase to every single one of our employees.
Well, earlier we talked about not paying the EDC the $120,000. And if I remember correctly, I think to do a half-cent tax cut, we needed to get a little closer to that figure, around 120. And so if that would be the only thing that we cut out of this budget in order to achieve that half-cent tax decrease, I think that would be, a palatable deal, in my opinion, and leave everything else intact.
Hold on, let Councilman Allen, I'll go back around again, Councilman Cole.
That's all I had.
Okay.
So when we started looking at the half-cent or 1 cent tax cut, I got with Mr. Herrera and I said, hey, Mr. Herrera, can we look at doing half-cent, 1 cent tax cut without cutting essential personnel, right? And so at our first budget meeting, when the list came up and it had the half-cent, and then right below it, it had the 1 cent, and then below it, underneath the 1 cent, it had delaying or cutting the firefighters a portion out, right? Wait until hire them till the following year, or whatever the case might be. I'll be quite frank with that kind of perturbed me a little bit, right? Because I didn't want essential personnel to be affected. And so that's when I had come back and said, okay, well, let's look at tax cuts for executive personnel or whatever, and maybe I wasn't clear or whatever, but we've got that cleared up, and it was geared towards executive personnel, because, I mean, at the end of the day, and Mr. Ayer, you can probably attest to this, that you or your executives don't want to give up any dollars, just like the rest of the employees don't want to give up any dollars, just like I don't want to give up any of my dollars, or anybody else doesn't want to give up any of their dollars. And what I really wanted was an extensive look at the fat that we're spending in the city on reoccurring costs, things that we don't need to spend money on. And Mr. Wooliver has brought up some good points. The library, do we really need to be spending $40,000 on the library? You know, do we really need to go put $10,000 into the Shirts Senior Citizen Center right now? I mean, especially since it's closed and all that sort of stuff. Where can we make effective cuts on budgetary items that are reoccurring that we maybe don't need to have, is really where I was hoping to take the focus of the cuts. And so I agree with you, Mr. Wooliver, you know, that we have to invest in our personnel. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to invest in our personnel, because the better personnel that you have in the city or anywhere, the better results you're going to get, right? So we've got to invest in them. And I know, do I want to take cuts from the employees? Heck no, I don't. But I will say this, and everybody knows this. I mean, in the times that we're in right now, there are corporations throughout the United States that are making their employees take 10 to 20% cuts on their salary, and they may never see again. Would I say that we do that here? Absolutely not. I don't want to do that, but I do want to look at where can we trim the fat. What do we have to have? You know, do we need an extra vehicle this year? Can we delay another vehicle for next year? You know what I'm saying? Things of that nature, to where we can help out our citizens. And I got it. 1 cent tax break, $25 on $100,000 or $250,000. But you know what? It's $25. I mean, at the end of the day, we're making a valiant effort in order to try to take care of our citizens, where they've had 5 years of tax increases, right? And that tax increase last year may have only been $25, but it still comes out of their pocketbook and it hurts them. And if we can give it back to them this year, why not? I mean, if we can find the way to cut it this year and give it back to them, great, without destroying the city, obviously. You know, I don't want to rob from Peter to pay Paul, but I mean, if we can do it and we can effectively keep it, then great. And I'm not saying that we have tax cuts every single year, but I mean, if we're going to give a tax cut, I say 2020 is the year to do it, right? For 2021, because this year's just been hell on all of us.
No commentary?
Yeah, I was trying to think more about the 120, or now if it's going to be $90,000. If that gets moved from however our talks go, gets moved, or a budget amendment, you know, that's still $90,000 can go to. I mean, there's still things our folks do. So not only do you invest in your people, you got to make sure they got the beans, the bullets, the toys, whatever analogy you want to use to do their job. You know, there's older equipment that needs to get replaced. There could be a bucket truck that's been removed. There are other equipment that they need. You know, the citizen doesn't care really that they've got, you know, somebody comes by and trims the trees. Well, why is this stuff still out here? Well, they don't know. I mean, it makes sense that, well, the street sweeper's busted. You know, well, there's 120,000 you got in there for the, you know, for those, the maintenance things, or the preventative maintenance that you need. And while, yeah, it's nice, it'd be nice to have another $25 in your pocket, or double that if it's a $500,000 house. I wonder, you know, it seems so nominal and negligible. Who's going to, are they really going to notice it? Or is it just transparent to them that $25 or $50 over the course of the whole year? And they say, well, if the streets are swept, if the sidewalks are safe, if all these other things they want the city to do, they expect the city to do, the city should be doing. We've already given them, for a $150,000 house, the proposed tax rate, no new revenue, $2.50 back in somebody's pocket. And that same price of house, if we did 1 penny, they get a whole nother almost $13 back for that $150,000 house. And I'll go back to, we're trying to play catch up from years past of not doing the things we should have been doing or could have been doing because we didn't have the revenue or what. I personally, I'll just sum up. I'm comfortable with the budget as been proposed. Want the merit pay raises to be there, and however the EDC money, that for me, that's really the only other sticking point it's coming to mind on how that shakes out. Other than that, we are giving them a tax break, and I just to give them that additional one for the things that we can give them in return of what they expect the city to do. I'm comfortable with the budget as is.
Quick question. We talked about the reserve, right? And so we talked about making that percentage a little bit smaller, which would then in turn give us some revenue, right? To go possibly buy a bucket truck or to go pay for some of this other stuff that we need. And to me, that seems viable, right? Because there's some things out there that we need that we should probably, if we can reduce the reserve to a comfortable amount as per Miss Miranda, because I'm comfortable if she's comfortable, right? And so she mentioned her comfort zone, which was, can you restate what? 30%, right? So, and we're at 35% right now. So I mean, and so if we cut it to 30% and we kept it between like 28 and 30% in that realm, how much revenue would we be able to take back from that? Sure.
It's not revenue, it's in essence your savings account. So just like a personal savings account, you're recommended or it's suggested to keep 3 to 6 months in your personal savings account. So should anything happen, it's a savings account, it's not additional revenue, but it provides $700,000 approximately to
So we can
that
use that
5%
to help
difference.
pay for some of the police vehicles.
One-time costs.
One-time cost, right? So we got some one-time cost things that we're looking at in this coming up budget, right? That we can use that 700,000 for. And me personally, I'd like to do that and use that revenue or use the savings to pay for some of these one-time costs. And we can turn around and still give a little bit of a tax break this year. You know what I'm saying? And then these one-time costs are taken care of.
And just to clarify, we did budget that into the budget. We are using fund balance as a source for one-time costs this year. So the 220,000 or so of capital, that is coming from fund balance.
So 220 from capital, and the 1% tax rate would save us, would provide how much more revenue if we did a 1% tax rate drop?
1 cent.
1 cent
I'm sorry, 1 cent.
is 215,000.
Okay, wait, 215, and then how much would be in the funds balance that you have back into the budget? You said how much? You said for one-time cost.
700,000.
700,000. Okay, so in effect, you wash out, it's 500,000 or so.
So Mayor, let me please bear with the city council. I got a mistake when I think our very important facts that may or may not have been overlooked. The budget that we started with the general fund. the budget that we started with at the staff level with the general fund, we had to make approximately $500,000 because that was the impact of the COVID. And I'm very proud that our city departments worked really well to try to work within those assigned dollar amounts. Did they ask for things more than what we have money for? The answer is yes. We've all been through this. And as the manager working with our staff, we cut the budget to where we thought it was a reasonable and a responsible budget. Well, I think it's a good budget. I'm very proud of what all our staff have done during the pandemic. They were here at every level. Mentioned that over 90% of our staff, maybe closer to 95, 98% were here. And so, we're trying to be responsible in giving back a budget that addresses the COVID-19, addresses the ability to continue to have the merit program in place, addresses the ability to get new equipment. What I would recommend, and I've shared this with a couple of you, I believe, this 25 to 35% target has always been a concern of mine since I've been here because I think it's very high. The reserve level is working capital or savings account, what you have. Do you really need to have, $4.5 million, $4.7 million in your reserves? I think you can get by with less. I've talked with rating agencies. I've talked to financial advisors. I'm less conservative than Anna, but even Anna believes that the 25 to 35 could be knocked down to 25 to 30. Rather than do that all at once, I would recommend the ability to work with 3 members on the council to make a recommendation on the target fund balance and come back. I do believe you can reduce it by the $215,000 if that's what you want to use in order to do a 1 cent tax reduction this year. But I don't think we should go any further than that. It concerns me to go more than 1 cent on the tax rate. Now maybe I'm trying to show how conservative I am. I think a half a cent, and we would tie it back to what Mark Allen was suggesting. That is, if the council is not going to fund the $90,000, then let's use that to go towards keeping the tax rate either where it's at as proposed or knocking it down to half a cent.
And how much, based on the rate that we're going with, because it's already a discount from last year, right? So it's already been cut. How much has it been cut from last year?
I'm not
About a
sure.
half a cent? Last-
17, almost 2/10
So
of a cent.
2/10 of a cent?
If you're talking about the tax rate.
Yeah, last
I
year was-
want to remind, I'm sorry,
I got
this
you
is
next.
really loud.
Thanks.
I do want to remind that the 90,000 reduction to the EDC, we have an increase of more than that to add the salaries of those EDC members back into the general fund budget. So it's a wash or.
Well, that's what I was going to
Water.
add.
Yeah, Councilman Hicks had the floor next.
Some of our citizens are struggling with this impact of COVID. I mean, I know we all are in some form or another. And I think that, we need to make an effort to be fiscally responsible for those citizens. I mean, last year's council voted to raise the taxes 6.5%. And that city, and the city's budget grew almost $1 million. This increase was strictly from the property tax increase alone. That didn't include the slight increase from our sales revenue. Nobody knows where this pandemic is going or when it's going to end. But I think that we need to make an effort to help our citizens out now. I just, we raised the taxes on our citizens last year, 6.5%. We could have gone 8% if it was it was allowable without having a vote. But, that was a hefty increase, 6.5%. I don't see why we can't try and, as Mr. Quinn put it, cut some of the fat. And we've tasked Mr. H to do that. And I'd like to see that to where we can get in that range that we're talking about. That's what I got.
Did you, 6.5%? What, and that's not the rate, so I'm not sure I remember. Ms. Anna, can you help clarify what he, in finance terms, what did you mean?
I don't have that percentage in front of me. I could go into my office and get that number. The 6.5% is what was disclosed on the front of the cover. Just the same as the cover to this year says 5.6%, but we're offering the no new revenue tax rate, which is no tax increase. So this is language that's required by local government code, not by property tax code, and the measurement is different. So this 5.6%, much like the 6.5% last year, is also including tax revenue from new properties on the tax roll.
Okay.
And so it was not a 6.5% tax increase, but it did result in that additional revenue.
Okay. And again, since words can matter, I just want to, when we say trimming the fat, I mean, I remember when we had the first two budget meetings and, going through and you see largely across the board negative percentage drops in everybody's area for the most part. And other than a few programs, that are the nice to have, if you want to put that in the category of fat, if you will, valid things, but things that aren't necessary to keep the city going. I'm not sure what else we can do. I mean, we're not hiring some folks. Other than that, you're now saying, well, you can't buy that piece of equipment that you need to do a job, or you can't go on this training to do something you need to make you better at doing your job. I'm not jumping out, nothing's jumping out at me, what other fat there is. And if you've got something in mind, please, I mean, I want to hear it so that I can see, he means this, not that.
I mean, you hit some of the points. I mean, we talk about the library fund. If there's $40,000 going to the library, the $10,000 that's going to go to the shirts, seamstress, and there was a few other things on there. Obviously, the $90,000 to I mean, and again, I think Mr. Herrera, he may have listed everything. I don't know if that was everything that we had. The only thing I do know is that I don't want to cut essential services, and I want to make sure that our folks are paid, right? And so if we have an avenue to use the reserve since it is a savings account, cutting the reserve and taking 220,000 out of there to give this back to the citizens, because it is their money, right? I mean, at the end of the day, it's their money. And it may be $25, it may be a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but let's give it back to them. I mean, I don't see any harm in giving them a little bit back this year. Again, 2020 has been tough on a lot of people. And so if we can use this reserve fund to do that, then I say, let's do it. The budget is what the budget is. Obviously there's going to have to be some reworking of some of the figures, because y'all are going to now have to pay the salaries of these two employees as compared to coming from the EDC. But at the end of the day, I mean, if y'all are comfortable with shrinking it $220,000, and then moving from there as we move forward on how we're gonna set that limit and getting a committee together to determine what that limit's gonna be. I mean, I don't see any reason why we can't do that and give the citizens back their money.
Okay, so the consideration and the direction that we're going here, what's the plan?
Well, I'll make a motion.
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion that we do a 1 cent tax cut by using the reserve fund in order to fund the 1 cent tax cut for fiscal year 2021.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and second, starting with Councilman Wilbur.
Is there a clarification that needs to be made? Sorry, I'm hearing chatter.
The vote on the tax rate occurs next Tuesday, so
So we're jumping the gun on this?
So the
basically giving direction to staff as to the.
Okay,
Discussing consideration of proposed
so we
operation
can
budget
vote on this, correct, Frank?
and its proposed tax rate. It's on here.
I think they have the language to do what they
I mean, the
suggest.
language is on here for us to do it.
And then,
We'll officially vote on the tax rate at the next meeting. We actually do this today. There's a public notice.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
so what'll happen is, based on your motion, if a majority of the council members agree, then when the time comes for the budget to be considered by the full council, we will have implemented those changes.
Okay, let's do
That's
that.
what we need to do.
Okay. All right.
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah?
Yay.
Motion carries 5-0. Before we adjourn, I want to thank everybody. I know both items, a lot of work was put into them, a lot of tough decisions, a lot of consideration, so.
And Mayor,
Thank you
may I-
all for
May I
taking.
make one interjection?
finish what
So
I'm
I
saying
just want to
first?
say thanks to all the employees that showed up tonight. Thanks, your feet are probably all killing you over there. And thanks for sending the message of how much this means to you. Thank you.
Thanks for cutting me off.
Thank you.
And so all the time and effort that's put into this and, and thank you staff for coming here an extra night. Take care of all this. So with that, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.